First of all, I want to thank the committee. Oh, thank you. Does that go home or is that go? Anyway, I want to thank the committee for voting him in. I submitted his nomination 15 years ago, and so I thought that, and they, Mike brought back the documentation I submitted. I thought that was it. I thought we lost. But I got a call the other day, and a few days ago or weeks ago, and they told me he's been inducted. Oh my God, what's wonderful. I was surprised and happy for him when I got the call. In preparing this, I learned a lot about my father, what I didn't know about him, and he was an old German. He never talked about his life as in high school and all that. I didn't know anything, basically, except what I read. But I never realized how good this man was, and it was a wonderful, pleasant surprise. A little background, my dad was born in 1912. He attended St. Mary's from 1928 to 1931. He was the youngest son of German Catholic parents, Henry Kraus and Anna Lawrence. Some of you may know that in those days, it was a requirement to be German to get into St. Mary's. Some of you old timers, did you know that? Well, I got a true story. One day when I was in the first grade, the nun called me out of class. I was 6 years old, and there I was face to face with Monsignor Zeroff. Now, I'm not going to tell you the whole story because I think he's in the Hall of Fame, so I gotta be careful. But anyway, he was 71 years old at the time, and I was petrified. He told me I couldn't go to school at St. Mary's. I had to go home. This is true. My mother came to get me, they called her. Of course, she went ballistic, as any mother would, and called the assistant priest, Father Dobmeyer, who they knew very well. It turns out that the Monsignor had somehow mistaken me for my classmate, John O'Brien. Now, I mean, how can you be more German than Kraus or more Irish than O'Brien? Anyway, it was fixed, and I went back to school the next day and graduated 12 years later at St. Mary's, along with O'Brien. So the only German rule was broken. Anyway, my dad had 4 brothers, Al, Ed, Walt, and Frank, and 2 sisters, Marie Omer and Lenora Mashari, and Lenora's daughter, Judge Ann Mashari, is with her husband, Stu Lippy, down there to honor my father. Thank you for both being here. My dad and mother had 5 children, myself, Ralph, Junior, I was called Sonny most of the time. Sandra, Rick, Gary, and Ronald, and all of them are here tonight. I thank you, well, my whole family for coming. 2 of us graduated from St. Mary's, myself in '56 and my sister Sandra in '57. I would like also to recognize 5 of my dad's grandchildren, my sons Steve and Matt from Columbus, my brother Rick, his daughter Rochelle Crow from Michigan, my brother Gary's sons Eric and Brian from New Jersey. Thank you all for coming. And I have one more guest. His name is Bob Krimus. You may know Bob. He's one of the dwindling few. He's a World War II Navy vet. In combat battle, he was in battle aboard the USS California in the Pacific Campaign. He joined the Navy when he was only 17 years old. There he is, right there. Bob, stand up. of my dad's siblings were athletically inclined, except his sister Lenora, I believe, right? And I gathered all in my information on my dad from the Bell, which is a school newspaper, many of you know, and from the Sandusky newspaper archives. From 1928 to 1960, he was mentioned a remarkable 477 times in the newspaper. I selected just a few for the poster display back there and suggest you all take a look. He was quite a guy. He played all 4 years of both football and basketball, earning 7 varsity letters. He was described as an all-around natural athlete, showing exceptional athleticism and leadership in every sport he played. Unfortunately, St. Mary's had limited sports available to play in those days because baseball was his best sport. In football, he earned 4 letters, playing all positions on both sides of the line, both offense and defense. He was even the punter in the last 2 years, known for his long punting and accuracy. In his senior year, he was captain of the team and led them through the most successful season in St. Mary's football history up until that time. He was known as a player of toughness and courage, demonstrating this by playing his senior year with a knee injury that I think Rick said it bothered him the rest of his life. I never knew this, but after researching it, after high school, he played semi-professional football in the Sandusky area here. In basketball, he earned 3 letters. He was taller than most of the other players and was gifted with large hands. This is an unbelievable thing that he had. If you ever met him and shook hands with him, my God, you know. And it came from his sister-in-law, or no, our grandmother. We have a picture of my grandmother, and her hands are huge. And anyway, he had apparently inherited that. Unlike the tall boys of that age, however, he was well coordinated and even played the guard position in basketball. Most of the time, though, he played forward and center because of his rebuilding ability. He was known for his accurate long shooting, his defense, and especially for making crucial shots under pressure to win games. After graduating, he spent the following 30 years playing and managing fast-pitch softball. Fast-pitch softball was very popular in Sandusky in those years. Some of you old people might remember. As well as the whole country. This was before TV and air conditioning, and so in the summer, as many as 1,500 people would go watch their favorite teams. And they called it indoor baseball. Now, where that come from, I was asking Bob about it. He doesn't know. Maybe one of you could figure that one out. Why they call it indoor baseball, because you played it outdoor. So, but anyway, when I was young, I played both hardball and fast pitch softball, and I was a pretty good hitter in those days, but I couldn't hit a fast pitch. Couldn't. Hardball was easier to hit, even though it was a smaller ball, because the speed was about the same, but the pitcher was 18 feet farther back. In fast pitch, it was at 43 feet. Some of these young girls you see in college today play fast pitch. I don't know how they can hit it. And for example, Eddie Feiner was the king of the court. Some of you old people again would remember that. He was a famous softball pitcher that would tour the United States, and he was so fast, he could throw it so fast. He only had 4 people. He put 3 people in the outfield, and then he would face 9 guys and just strike them all out. He would even pitch from second base and strike people out. In 1967, he struck out Willie Mays, McCovey, Clemente, and Killebrew, and he was clocked at 103 miles per hour. Now, I wanted to mention that because I want to demonstrate how difficult that sport is. And it's not played that much anymore, except for in college for the girls, but maybe because nobody could hit the darn thing. But again, like baseball and football, my dad was an all-around player of this sport also. He could do it all, pitching and hitting. He was one of the best softball pitchers in the area, many times pitching no-hitters, as shown in the display back there. He also, again, he had big hands, and with those big hands I mentioned before, he could do anything with the ball. He could make it almost unhittable because he could spin it, a drop or a curve or an upshoot. And I tried to hit him one time when he pitched to me and I couldn't hit him. His pitching matches with Willie Schwanger, who was another good local pitcher. I think Bob, you would maybe Willie Schwanger. Oh yeah, they were legend, these matchups, and the newspaper would advertise it, a couple days before to make sure that everybody knew they're going to be matching. They're going to have a game together, and they would the crowds would be tremendous. Anyway, he was not only a good pitcher, he was an exceptional hitter with power. Many times he won his own games with home runs. Rick said he saw one game where he pitched a two-hitter and 2 home runs and won the game. He always batted 3rd or 4th in the lineup where the best hitters always bat. He was also mostly on top of the league in hitting. On batting average, he won the batting title in 1937. He played for several teams and won city championships, like in 1939 with Simplex Radio, which is the team is shown on this poster board there. And I'll never forget, I was a bat boy for a team he managed, and it was near the end of his career, and he just managed. He didn't play much, but in this particular game, his team was up against a very, very difficult pitcher, very fast. He was striking everybody out on the team, and no one could hit this guy. So as the game went on, I could see my dad was getting more frustrated and more frustrated. And finally, with his team at bat and the next batter up, he had had enough. He suddenly yelled at the next batter to get up, and he says, "Give me that bat." And he pinch hit himself as the next hitter. There was a huge crowd, and I'll never forget this. I couldn't believe he did that. I feared he would strike out, and like the rest of his players, and my dad would be humiliated in front of all these players. I don't remember the pitch sequence, but I still remember how confident he was as he took position at the plate. And to my shock, he didn't strike out. He hit a line drive over second base for a base hit. I couldn't believe it. But after all these years now, and knowing how good he was, I shouldn't have been surprised. He was quite the man. My dad and my mother, Dorothy, moved to Michigan in 1963. He passed away in 1978 at the age of 66, followed by my mother in 2006. I'm sorry I never knew how good an athlete he was when he was still alive. He never talked about it, but if anyone is deserving of it, this man was. Thank you very much.